YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, coming to you from the central Chaos Waste, not the southern Chaos Waste, not the northern, nor the eastern or the western, but the central Chaos Waste. That's right, central. Okay, I'm going to quit saying that. So, I've brought the Dwarves against Chaos. My opponent picked Chaos, and not a lot of people picked Chaos, and I was like, I'll bring Dwarves. It's a fun matchup, in my opinion, between Dwarves and Chaos. Chaos has better infantry, but they're quite pricey. Their units have superior stats for the most part. I brought a ton of anti-armor units, so I have 5 Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. I have 4 Longbeards with great weapons, and these guys do have very long beards, long enough that their tassels could be sweeping the floor. But that's probably if Dwarfs cleaned up after themselves, which I highly doubt. I've got 2 Quarrelers, 1 Organ Gun, and I've got 2 Gyrocopters with brimstone guns who just bombed a bunch of these Forsaken. It didn't do a whole lot because the bombs are wholly underwhelming. I dropped bombs like straight on these guys. I kid you not, like straight on the Forsaken. Meh, didn't do hardly anything. And it was definitely a direct hit. So he has a giant, 3 trolls, and a bunch of Forsaken, as well as a Chaos Lord on a... This is a Chaos Nightmare. Anyway, some of their units have some interesting... We'll go look afterwards what his army was, but and he's got an exalted hero, so 2 melee heroes and a Forsaken rush. Now, personally, I don't prefer the Forsaken rush versus the Dwarves. Yes, it can deal a ton of damage, but an all-out Forsaken rush is going to get hit by a lot of missiles. It's going to take a lot of damage, and then the challenge with the Dwarves is the Forsaken are definitely going to outclass the Dwarves in terms of damage, but their numbers are rather few, and the Dwarves have very good leadership, so it gets very hard for the Forsaken to just kill these guys out. He does bring the armored trolls in right behind, which is pretty nice. I'm using my gyrocopters to pull down the giant slowly, and he brings his heroes right in here too, and I'm trying to fight them back with Ungrim Iron Fist. And you can see Ungrim gets a pretty nasty charge there from the Exalted Hero. The pretty sweet Chaos Steeds here that these guys are riding too. So a lot of damage being done to my men, but I have an active reserve, so I'm going to move in these 3 Dwarf Warriors that are in an active reserve. You can see my Quarrelers now targeting the Chaos Giant. The Chaos Giant capable of causing tons of damage, but he becomes a missile sponge when facing the proper Dwarf army, and he's not going to get a lot of damage done. You definitely have to have some units like some Marauder Cavalry or something to distract in order to use the Chaos Giant successfully. He is getting absolutely shredded here. And again, the Trolls do a lot of damage, but their leadership is not that good. It's a big problem for them. So you can see that one of them has already broken, and my opponents forgot to bring them back. They didn't lose any units, but they broke. And you can see my units holding strong. The Forsaken getting a fair number of kills considering their unit size, but again, they have a hard time just straight breaking the Dwarves. Here my Quarrelers are killing this armored troll, but the Forsaken is able to get through my men, and it's going to get into my my Quarrelers. This is getting a little bit nasty for me here. I decide his general wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention here, so he's going to get hit with brimstone guns. You can see the armored trolls, again, causing a lot of damage. So it's a nasty fight, pretty close, but he's starting to lose on his left flank over here, and I'm going to start to wrap him up. In the center, he punched through, but my gyrocopters were able to take out his lord. This is a big deal because this is about to wreck his morale. I have the organ gun firing, and I have my gyrocopters firing. It's going to be enough to drop the Chaos Lord while he is fleeing the battlefield and inflict a pretty massive penalty. So you're going to see a lot of the Chaos units start to wrap up at this point. Got the Exalted Hero who is routing, I believe. Yes, he's routing. Chaos Troll's routing, and now being shot by the gyrocopters causes a penalty. It's kind of like getting hit by artillery, so the leadership for the remaining Chaos units definitely going to suffer greatly. And again, so having the reserves here, I was kind of able to outlast the Chaos Rush. And so again, even though the Forsaken and those melee lords can cause a ton of damage, and I see what the Chaos player was getting at, I just don't think that the Forsaken have the staying power to really finish that fight. So probably, you know, if I were playing as Chaos, I would think that it's a little bit better to go ahead and use some of those more expensive armored infantry. Chaos Warriors tend to be a pretty good pick against the Dwarves, and they will beat Longbeards and the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons both head-on. So, I mean, the Chaos Warriors are definitely a pretty solid weapon against the Dwarves. Now, where the Chaos is going to struggle versus the Dwarves is they don't really have any fast-moving flying units. They do have access to a Manticore, though, and that's not a bad idea in the terms of the Dwarves, because the Dwarves can't slow you down. They can't really pin down a flying unit, and a flying unit can be very annoying for the Dwarves to deal with. You can see the kills here, again, just damage done by the blasting charges, absorbing the charge of the Forsaken so that my Longbeards could put up a better fight. They still got absolutely mauled by the Forsaken for the most part, but my second line of Dwarf Warriors was able to come in and hold long enough. Ungram able to dish a lot of damage to the Chaos Lord until I was able to finish him with other units. Organ Gun, not a lot of kills, it was firing mostly at monsters, so probably not cost effective here. 2 XP on this gyrocopter, so it got some pretty important kills for that to be the case. And let us go take a look and just kind of talk about I think a few things that help Chaos in their matchup against the Dwarves. I have Chaos picked up over here, so again, I'm not opposed to my opponent bringing a Chaos Lord against the Dwarves, because Dwarves have some magic resistance. It doesn't mean it doesn't work on them, but you don't really have to focus on it. So I'm thinking like either a Manticore or a Chaos Dragon here would have been a cool pick to put with the Chaos Lord. It gives him that flying element, lets him get to my organ guns and my quarrelers, and then that helps his giant all of a sudden become very useful, and probably would have given me fits had he done that in this battle. He brought an Exalted Hero. You can also put it on a Manticore, which would honestly make for a pretty nasty combination. 2 Manticores flying around for the Dwarves, I mean, it's going to be tough to handle. You also have this Barded Chaos Steed, and if we look out here, Encourage, Missile Resistance, High in Forest, none of these are anything special there. Barded Chaos Seed. Yeah, never mind. So yeah, there's nothing to see in there. But the that's definitely another choice there. And yes, you can still put him on the Manticore. It gives you other options. Chaos Infantry, and let's assume that we put him on the Manticore just to maximize the mobility that our guys have around the battlefield. Nice sturdy mainline of Chaos Warriors. 6 of these guys will give most of a Dwarf army a pretty tough time. The only thing that can really cut these guys down is hammers, and hammers cost significantly more, so you'd be in pretty good shape. You've got your Flying Lords. They can kind of deal with the skirmishers, so I wouldn't really spend any money on Marauder Horsemen. You could grab a Chaos Warhound, but the only thing they can do is hurt skirmishers, and that's kind of a risky spend. So let's say maybe that he wanted to go ahead and bring the Chaos Giant. That's fine. Like I said, I think this army would better protect it, and then he could still throw his Armored Trolls in here too. He'd still have room for all 3 of them. This would have been a lot more difficult for me to stop. And the main reason is these Chaos Warriors, they don't go down as quick as Forsaken because they are heavily armored and they have better defense. They will do damage more slowly, but they're going to be a lot harder for my guys to cut down. And then while that's happening, the Chaos Lord and the Exalted Hero swoop in. They take out my missile units, and it would take Ungram a long time to try and kill both these guys, assuming he could even do it. That allows your Chaos Trolls with armor. They may be able to sneak around the flank and do a ton of damage into the flank where the giant supports right there in the center. Yeah, you don't really have an answer to the gyrocopters, but with the 2 flying units, you could at least use these guys to try and chase the gyrocopters away, while one of them maybe deals with the skirmishers and stuff as well, or just ignore the gyrocopters temporarily and go work on the missiles and then focus on the gyrocopters once you've taken the missiles out of the picture. It's kind of up to you. Like I said, this wouldn't necessarily be like a perfect counter, but it's a counter. The other option you have if you want to deal with the gyrocopters is to go with a wizard instead of the Exalted Hero, and I don't know if any of the wizards can fly though. Barded Chaos Steed, Barded Chaos Steed, Barded Chaos... No, okay, so none of the wizards can fly, so... But, I mean, they can have spells that help you out. But again, remember the Dwarfs have magic resistance. So what do you think? How do you all like the matchup of Chaos and Dwarves? Personally, I think it's fun. I think both factions have an interesting matchup to each other. Believe it or not, the Dwarves actually have kind of a mobility advantage for the most part because Chaos Cavalry is so expensive. You could potentially risk bringing cheaper Chaos Infantry or just ditch the monsters. So this is another option. You could ditch all the monsters and you could bring in some Chaos Knights or Gore Beast Chariots or something else like that. But if we go into the Cavalry, you could come in here to the Chaos Knights. These guys would be good enough. You can only get 2 of them though because they're so expensive. The monsters are a little bit cheaper and you might get more bang for your buck out of it. So just something to consider there too. But like I said, what do you all like about the matchup? Who do you favor? What kind of strategies do you like to employ when you're playing one against the other? HeirofCarthage signing out. I will see you all again soon. Later.